It is a big weekend ahead. Tomorrow's Dunkley by-election is a major test for both Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton. Lots of issues on voters' minds, plus Sydney's annual Mardi Gras will see tens of thousands participate in the parade. But one key figure will be missing from both events, and that is the Prime Minister, who has instead opted to celebrate his 61st birthday at home. Joining me to discuss is News Corp columnist Erin Molan and Sky News host Danica De Giorgio. Ladies,
Hello.
Thank you so very much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Nice to have you both. And Albanese became the first sitting Prime Minister to actually march in Mardi Gras last year. Is this strange? See, my theory is that he's a bit gun-shy after Taylor and Katy Perry last weekend, and he feels like he has to, you know, if your parents get mad if you're going out too much and you've got exams on, you then stay home to placate them.
Yeah, right, because he can't, nothing will be as sparkly. Is that what you're saying? Oh, look, I initially looked at this and thought, yeah, Dunkley's really important. This is the litmus test. We're going to find out what people actually think in that election as sort of representative of where he's at, following the Voice referendum. Why is he not going to be at Mardi Gras, particularly the week we've had and the difficulty around the police? I think he's made the right decision, actually. I think sometimes when you're in politics, he's said it's his 61st birthday on Saturday. He wants to spend it with his son and with his fiancée. That's okay in my book. Of course, as you mentioned, he was the first sitting Prime Minister. Shorten, when he was opposition leader, marched in the parade. Turnbull was a guest at Mardi Gras. But I think, you know what, I think it's okay. And also, if Dunkley doesn't go well, it's far better to be at home.
Yeah, I'm much more of a hider than a be out there. Yeah. Danica, do you think that much will be made of this result? How much do you think weighs heavily on this result for both government and opposition?
I think a lot weighs for both because, look, it's going to be very difficult to judge. Labor should romp this in, essentially. They hold it on a margin of 6.3%. But because of Anthony Albanese's own failings over the last few months, it means we don't know how this is going to swing. It could go either way. A narrow victory or a loss for Anthony Albanese is still possibly fatal for his leadership because this is a referendum on him. It's a referendum on his leadership. As you said, it's a litmus test because people have perceived him to be Airbus Albo. They sent us to a referendum that none of us wanted to do in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
In that area voted no.
If you're looking for a real test of cost of living, go to Dunkley. The medium income there is $43,000. So really, voters are going to be looking at that tomorrow and going, is he really the man of his bond? So yeah, I think that he's going to be. But also on the other end, Peter Dutton. But it will be interesting to see the result.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it. And you can, of course, watch it on Sky News tomorrow from 6 p.m. Now, a new poll conducted by the Herald has found that a majority of voters support testing politicians for drugs and alcohol. Now, this was, of course, a big debate last week off the back of Barnaby Joyce and Perrin Davies. Look at the results of this. Now, I think it's a little bit extreme. I think it will cost a lot of money. I think it's a little bit extreme off a couple of bad behavioural incidents, but what do you think?
I think it's completely extreme. In the end, we need to have a trust that our workplaces are dry. And the majority of workplaces in Australia, let's be honest, are dry. You don't go to work with a bottle of alcohol. It's ridiculous. We don't need to waste more taxpayers' money now questioning, testing every MP that goes into federal parliament. I think it's a complete overreaction. Yes, the events of the last 2 weeks, there's been some real wrongful events, and we know this. But come on, in these years of Parliament, really is it necessary?
I think even drink driving, police don't have enough people to do that. And I know it wouldn't necessarily be police, but those numbers are way down. If we don't have enough people to man those tests, which are far more important because it's the safety of others, then this seems a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, look, what's the allure of politics if there's a bomb ban and an alcohol ban?
We're going to have to pay them more now. This is ridiculous.
But look, to your point, I think self-governance, we stop talking about it. We just want to nanny state everything. And actually, what we're trying to teach our kids, what we're trying to teach teenagers as they come out of adolescence, what we're trying to teach adults is self-governance. OK, this has happened, Barnaby Joyce. It's not a good look. But all of us should perhaps think, OK, should I be having that drink at lunchtime? Is that the right thing to do? I'm being paid, particularly when you're taxpayer funded to do your job. But in terms of wagging the finger and nanny state, it's not going to work. It's poor waste of money.
Prince William has caused a frenzy in the media lately, firstly for his unexplained and rather last-minute cancellation from his godfather's memorial service, so dropping out for mysterious personal matters. Now, that was a bit earlier this week. It got everyone talking about the health of the Princess of Wales, though the palace has been quick to stamp out any gossip, reporting that she was, in quotation marks, recovering well, though we still haven't seen anything of her. But now we've heard from her. William referenced her when he went to a synagogue in London overnight, and he said that both he and his wife Kate were extremely concerned about the rise in anti-Semitism. He put out an almost unprecedented statement, Ange, last week, relay to the war in Gaza, and that, I mean, for a royal to weigh into that kind of thing was bizarre. And a lot of people, particularly those from Israel and of the Jewish faith, thought that he was having a dig at Israel. So is this maybe his way of kind of coming back in and softening that a bit?
He was always planning to do this. This was actually cancelled from earlier in the year, so he definitely had to turn up yesterday to this event. Otherwise, there were going to be massive questions asked. To your point about Gaza, yes, that was really unprecedented for a royal to step into that conversation. He stopped just short of calling for a ceasefire, but I think, you know, he needed to address the issue of anti-Semitism, which is rife in London at the moment. I've been speaking to friends over there. It's really bad. The second point about the referencing Kate, oh my gosh, those people in the palace must be working overtime in terms of damage limitation in the press office. Because, you know what, I'm sure that earlier this week, Kate was not going to be mentioned in this at all, but the personal matters, there's so much, you know, I mean, the environment around the royals, if you're talking to anyone in London right now, is febrile, because people don't know what's happened to her. We haven't seen her since Christmas. The fact she's name-checked in this, the fact that William, you know, cited personal matters for not being at King Constantine's memorial is really interesting. We don't generally see them citing personal matters. So a lot of questions about how Kate is.
Is it making you more curious?
Of course it is. I mean, the journalist in me is desperate to find out what's going on here. There's so much speculation because Kate has simply been out of action for so long. And naturally, if you've got Prince William who's pulling out of what seemed to be quite an important event that he would normally have been at, and that he hasn't. Look, naturally, the internet is going to run right. We know the monarchy are notoriously private, so whether or not we ever find out what is going on. But
see, if it was Harry or Meghan, someone from the monarchy would have leaked it by now.
We would have had a field day with it. We would have had a real field day with it, but no one's telling us what's going on.
Now, quickly, Facebook has announced today that it's not going to renew its deals with Australian media. So essentially, and look, I'm paraphrasing here, they want to use all of our content and not pay a cent for it. They are a billion dollar company. The record profits this year. I think it is appalling.
Oh, I think it is appalling. They're a $1 trillion organisation, for goodness sake, and they cannot pay just for simple news services. In the end, in times of crisis, who do people turn to? They turn to news outlets. They turn to reputable news outlets like Sky News, and journalists to give them the most up-to-date information. And there is nothing wrong with paying for such a good service. I think it's an appalling decision.
I think you're absolutely right. And I, as someone who writes and whose content is cannibalised by these platforms, it really distresses me. If we want a strong, capable, investigative media, if we want the sorts of probing journalism that means that we have a fourth estate, then we actually have to hold these companies to account. And under the agreement that was signed 3 years ago, there is opportunities for fines and that sort of thing, whether or not that actually pay them. But I think the government has to go in hard. We knew this was going to happen because it happened in Europe. So why were we not on the front foot with it?
Yeah, it's frustrating. And as someone who really lobbied the government to introduce the Online Safety Act and had some quite incredible access to the responses of these big social media companies, they are just, and I don't use this word lightly, they are scummy in the way they approach the responsibility they have, not only in a commercial sense to content and a market of whose content they use to make lots of money, but won't take responsibility for the safety of people using their platforms. They are, just when you think they couldn't get any worse, they do. And the Australian government should say, well, sod off.
I agree.
They lose much more than we do. And yes, I'll miss Instagram at 2 a.m. in the morning, but I'll find something else to do.
We'll find something else.
I'll absolutely find something else. Ladies, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break.